We finally made it back to our Star Wars consensus rankings video. It took us a minute. We kind of had a break there with Halloween. We did our Halloween special, and then we had some scheduling conflicts and sickness, and the fun of the holidays. So we did make it back, and thank y'all for being back with us. We're the Film Rebels. It's JBJ Schultz, Iskuzel, and tonight our friends over at the Daystrom Dropouts podcast, Andrew and Megan, are back to uh, continue our rankings of all of the Star Wars. So, um, just a preface, I think I've said this in the first video or the first couple parts. We are doing most of the Star Wars content. We did not do the holiday special. We did not do the Ewok adventures. We did not do the Droids animated show, and obviously we did not have the newest show, Skeleton Crew, on here because it is still ongoing. So, but we have all given our rankings. We've compiled them into a consensus list, and we are picking up today where we left off last time, which is at number 23. So, I guess without further ado, we'll just jump right into it. Number 23. Yeah, this I told him before we got started. This is a juicy one to start out with, so we'll definitely have some good discussion on it. And it's been a while, so I don't even remember like what our individual rankings were of this. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. It's going to be the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and as you can see, all of us at the Film Rebels are not the biggest fan. For reference, there are 29 of these, so mine is at 28.
You guys have souls.
Yeah. Iskuzel and Schultz are at 25, and then obviously our guests Megan and Andrew, y'all are at 10 and 14 respectively. I think, I guess I'll start it since I'm the lowest. All of the context for me on this one is Obi-Wan Kenobi is my favorite Star Wars character. So the height of my expectations are riding on this show in terms of this is the one I want to be the best. And so I had really high expectations for it. Obviously, Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Hayden Christensen back as Darth Vader. You had some guys like Senator Organa was back reprising, same actor reprising his role. I cannot think of the actor's name to save my life, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting aspects. They brought in the Inquisitors from the Rebels show and from the Fallen Order and a video game, and so I don't know. There's a lot of cool elements in here, but for me, it was just the writing and the direction of the show felt extremely flat, and that's kind of where I'm at with it, to the point where there's a lot of like plot holes and writing mistakes, in my opinion, that we could talk about the trench coat scene, we can talk about the grown men can't chase the 10-year-old girl that's running around in the forest, and just those are minor things, but like there were other things where you essentially bring Leia into the picture when she's not supposed to know who Obi-Wan is. She's never met him before when she meets him in A New Hope. And so there's a lot of just things that don't go well for this, and at least from my perspective. And then I think visually you can tell this was made in the volume, and everything feels kind of small, as opposed to like an Andor or something that feels very large in scale in terms of the visuals and the locations and things like that. So I'm gonna leave it at that sort of my short answer, but that's obviously when the expectations are that high for me, it's easy for them to come crashing down in terms of the actual end result. So
yeah, I think Leia was my biggest issue with the entire show. I think it was just very dumb. The beginning of it, her one kind of brought it up, getting chased by grown men and they can't even catch her. I thought that was just the dumbest thing ever. I also found her character very annoying too. It was just not enjoyable to like see her on the screen acting and stuff, which I'm not saying the actress is bad, but I think it was probably more or less the writing of the show. I think more than the actress's fault probably, but it also had like, I don't know, kind of like anticlimactic ending a little bit. I was expecting a little bit more, and it just took forever to build up with Obi-Wan and his turmoil between like the Force. I thought they could have gotten that on a little bit quicker, and yeah, I don't know. The plot was just lackluster. Had a lot of plot holes, like you said. I mean, the whole thing like where Leia somehow knows Obi-Wan Kenobi when she doesn't even know him in A New Hope. Like, it's just kind of weird. And yeah, I mean, the action scene at the end was dope. I mean, I love that. That was cool. Seeing Obi-Wan face off against Darth Vader, I thought they did that decently well. I also don't like the fact that like people can just get stabbed by a lightsaber now and be perfectly
Not
okay.
die.
Yeah, be perfectly okay. Like, I think that's just like dumb as well. Like, why are we adding that in when like before that was not a thing? Like, so
Oh man. Make Qui-Gon Jinn great again. That's what we
yeah, literally, Qui-Gon Jinn just died instantly, like from a stab wound.
Maybe they just hit a vital organ with Qui-Gon.
And Liam Neeson's like 6'5", so his organs are big.
I guess.
I think for me, it had quite a few fun moments. It did have a solid climax, but that the rest of the show was pretty much boring filler with non-compelling new characters, and like mentioned before, the Leia, not a huge fan. But I mean, the ultimate character journeys of Obi-Wan and Anakin were not really expanded upon, in my opinion. I think we're pretty much left in the same place we are at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So for me, the show just doesn't really accomplish a lot.
It doesn't justify its existence. That's something I was going to say. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, you can go first.
No, you go first.
Well, we're going in like ascending order, so
We are?
Yeah,
Oh.
I guess since you put it lower than me, go for it.
I actually agree with a lot of things you guys said, with the exception of it definitely doesn't serve a purpose. It was just it's a filler show. It doesn't tell us a new story. It just expands on the things that we've seen before, which I think is kind of the idea. I don't think they were trying to tell a new story. I mean, it's got Obi-Wan Kenobi in it. We know that he's a hermit. I think it was just people just kind of wanted Star Wars New Hope 0.5 kind of thing, thrown in with some elements of new content that they have been doing, like with the Hidden Path and the Jedi Underground Railroad sort of thing. I thought that was interesting. I think this was a show that they wanted to connect a lot of dots from new content to the pre-existing universe. I think that was the point of the show, but it didn't tell any new stories with the pre-existing characters. The Inquisitors was cool. The planet with the Inquisitor fortress was really cool. I'm a Fallen Order Jedi Survivor huge fan. Seeing that on screen, I was like, and Vader, Hayden Christensen really did good. Seeing him walk in the suit was cool. Seeing his face and hearing his voice, that was
even the 40-year-old Padawan.
Yeah, exactly. It was really cool. I don't know. It was just nice seeing him. Excuse me, seeing him again, just as a kid watching Star Wars. It was just cool because we've always seen Vader as James Earl Jones or some guy in a suit. I actually really liked Leia. Her running away from the adults. I never really thought of that.
I was gonna say, y'all have obviously never chased a 10-year-old girl. They're surprisingly quick.
They are pretty agile. With that said, I think the actress was really good for her role. Her supposedly knowing who Obi-Wan was, and then the New Hope, I've kind of come to accept that a lot is going to be retcon now. And if it's, unless it's major, like, I don't know, they make Luke Skywalker a Chinese little boy or something. I don't know. Like, and it's got to be so bad of a retcon that I can't watch it. But with otherwise, I've just kind of accepted it because it's almost in everything now, like everything. So I just try not to get too disappointed by like little retcons like that. Or if they make the Death Star like a cube, you know what I mean? Like other than that, I just kind of accept it. What else was good? Seeing Revenge of the Sith characters was really good. Them coming back, I think there was a lot of good attitudes with actors wanting to come back to reprise roles. Sometimes people do sci-fi and they kind of write it off later in life, and I think it was cool to see them come back. I liked it, but it definitely didn't serve a purpose. I think it would have been more interesting if the show is called Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think it would have been more interesting to literally show him and nothing else. They tried to do it to put in like I said, the Inquisitors and all this other stuff, which is cool. I liked it. But it was about him, so it'd almost been cool if they made a show about him on Tatooine having nothing to do with the Empire. Like it was just like his life while he was a hermit. I think that would have been a little bit more compelling and different. And then every now and then throw in some hints of the Empire, poking around, him watching Luke. But I think the powers that be know that people are going to watch it more if they put in big flashy stuff. So, you know what I'm saying? Like if it was a novel called Obi-Wan Kenobi, most books are, kind of first person perspective. So it'd have been just about him like trying to find food and, getting Jawas off his land. I don't know, just stuff like that. It would have been
and I think it may be a more introspective, because I think I would have liked to have seen him more dealing with the ramifications of Revenge of the Sith and
I would have too.
Internally struggling, whereas you see flashes of that, but I would have wanted to see more of an introspective character study, and then him maybe having to deal with some sort of on-planet conflict that sort of helps revive his sense of purpose and everything.
I agree. I think that would have been a little bit more interesting, but there's so much going on in the new Star Wars content that I think they just wanted to put in a little bit of everything. But I liked it. I liked it a lot. I definitely kept coming back wanting to see how they were going to tie it all together, and the fight scene at the end was really good.
Mm-hmm. I really don't have much to add. Y'all pretty much said just about everything I would have, but definitely for me, I mean, if the minute you put Hayden Christensen in, I'm all in. Anakin, I have a very soft spot for anything Anakin based, which is why the Clone Wars series is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. But yeah,
we'll get to that one.
Yeah. Yeah, just getting to see Obi-Wan, young Obi-Wan Kenobi again with Ian McGregor, just so much better. It brought back all the nostalgia. So that's why I put it so high, is because I'm a simp for nostalgia, not Hayden. But that's mostly it. I just really enjoyed seeing those characters from the prequels back in another series.
Yeah. And I think that makes total sense. I think that's probably where a lot of people fall with this one. But I mean, it has been extremely divisive, and so, I think maybe time will tell how it's viewed in the public eye. But I think for now, this is kind of a good read on where different those of us have been sort of in different areas. But yeah, let's jump over to 22, and I don't even remember which one's next, but yeah, it's going to be The Mandalorian Season 3. So just to preface a little bit, we did, with some of these IPs or projects, whatever you want to call them, we did split them up. Some we kept as a cohesive whole. So the Clone Wars TV series, we left it as a complete whole, whereas Mandalorian we split up into 3, and mainly because there's more disagreement between some of the seasons of The Mandalorian, whereas people like to talk about them separately, whereas some of the shows like Rebels and Clone Wars, they tend to talk about them all collectively. So we just kind of split it up based on how they tend to fall. But that's just to preface this, and it's weird. I just noticed, Megan, yours and Andrew's were flip-flop from the last one, so that's
I
just saw that. Yeah,
that's kind of funny. But I will not start this time. So how about we start from the highest and then just go from there? And it doesn't have to be in order of the numbers. You just jump in whenever you feel like it.
So would that be me?
I guess that's you.
I saw a TikTok or something the other day where it was a podcast, and these guys were talking about how mostly every single new Star Wars show or new content that we're getting, with the exception of maybe some video games, it's because it's trying to fix the damage done by Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi. And he started tying it together. He was like, think about I keep saying the Imperial Remnant because of my old expanded universe, but basically the First Order or
Don't ever stop.
all right, the Imperial Remnants and cloning that we have in the Mandalorian. There was a lot of cloning references. We see the Praetorian Guard in season 3 of the Mandalorian, which was a callback to The Last Jedi, and he rattled off about 4 or 5 things, and I should have saved it and wrote it down because I was meaning to bring it up, but I just thought that was interesting because I think it's true. I think that's very, very true. I think a lot of the damage control from that movie is being attempted to fix in a lot of these other shows, and I think The Mandalorian season 3 was probably the most obvious one, because with the exception of lightsabers and general Star Wars stuff, we physically saw something from the First Order in this season, and that was the Red Praetorian Guard that was guarding Snoke. And when I remember we were watching it, and he was like, "Send in the Praetorian Guard to go after the men." I was like, no, they're not gonna. What? And I was really shocked. And they kind of had this climactic moment with the music. So, in some ways, I actually really like that they're trying to do that. I'm not sure if it's very good artistically, but I think it's interesting that you can tell that producers and writers are trying to piece the mess that Star Wars is in right now. You can tell they care. But I really like season 3. I really like the Mandalorian season as a whole. It's kind of hard to rank seasons, I think. It's easier to do movies, but season 3 was really good. I think I didn't have a season of Mandalorian that I thought was bad, even though it was a lot of callbacks, and I mean everything in Star Wars is derivative, nothing's original, so I'm not going to fault it for that. People are like, "Oh, there's nothing new." Well, it's Star Wars. It's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, so it's but I'm going to ignore that. So I really liked it. I think it ended kind of cute with the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, whose name is Grogu. I just went brain dead. I just got off 7-day work streak, so I'm kind of like fuzzy. But I think it was kind of cute. I liked it. Seeing all the Mandalorians fly around together was like 13-year-old Lego me was just like, yeah, because I mean, little kids, I can just see someone being like, all right, they're on Mandalore and they're flying around and there's a dark saber and there's Jedi help. It was just very cool. It scratched a little kid in me. Like the little kid in me really liked season 3. And there was something else I was going to say. I like the acting was good. And it was cool to see Mandalore again, like as a planet, even though it's basically a giant garbage heap now. Go ahead. I'm done.
Okay. I really enjoyed The Mandalorian just as a whole. Unfortunately for me, the seasons kind of melded together. So when I ranked them, I just did it season 1, 2, 3 in order. So 3 being the last. But it kept me interested through the whole time. Like there wasn't really many episodes where I was like, I just don't know if I'm going to stop watching. I enjoy The Mandalorian. It's got very Seven Samurai feel through it almost through the entire series. I'm like Andrew. I really enjoyed going back to Mandalore. I enjoyed all the Mandalorians, the Darksaber. I love that they brought in the voice actor for what's her name? Bo-Katan. Thank you. Yes, like they brought in her actual voice actor.
That's cool.
To play Bo-Katan. I really enjoyed her kind of storyline through it.
Even though she looks mad the whole time.
Well, because she's Bo-Katan.
But Bo-Katan is kind of mad.
She looks mad in the cartoon too. So
yeah, good point.
So, but season 3, season 1, they're all just kind of equal to me. I really enjoy The Mandalorian. I have no real qualms with it. Of course, that's because I don't delve as deeply into Star Wars as y'all. I'm pretty surface level for the most part.
Well, for me, it's not terrible, but it's definitely a step down from the first 2 seasons. This one's kind of another one that I didn't really feel like it needed to exist. It didn't justify itself. They spend a lot of time like going back, a lot of wheel spinning, so that they finally reunite Grogu with the Jedi and then immediately reverse it, and then
I didn't like that either.
Dan finally gets the Darksaber and then loses it, and then it's destroyed, and then he starts to break away from his cult, and then he goes back to him, and Gideon is captured, but then escapes, and then he dies, but probably not, causing season 4. So it's just a lot of wheel spinning. You know, like you said, it's a lot. They're trying to redeem some of the Last Jedi stuff, but you know, season 1 and 2, and we'll talk about them more when we get to them. But had a very consistent vision.
That's true.
And then in season 3, Disney was kind of like, never mind.
You can definitely tell they changed their mind a lot in the direction of the show with season.
Well, this one, if there's any show that felt like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the studio interfered, it's this one.
With this season, yeah.
With this season in particular.
I don't think they expected The Mandalorian season 1 to be so successful. So I think there was a lot of pressure to keep things going. And season 2 did better with that. I can see how 3 kind of lost its way from season 1. I just really liked it. But it did. They changed, like, you know, who has the Darksaber this season? You know, who's alive this season? Are we like, and Grogu, the whole plot of getting Grogu to the Jedi was just kind of thrown away. So you could tell it was so successful that it definitely interfered with what they were trying to do, I think.
Yeah, I think my issue was like, I think there's too many like side stories in it. I just didn't enjoy that. It was hard to like focus on one single story, and it just like felt like the plot and the stories were just kind of all over the place. I also don't like how they did the Darksaber as well. Kind of agree with you on that. Like, I don't like the fact they destroyed it, and then it was like, was it Din or I can't remember what is his name. I'm blanking on it.
Gideon
Din,
or
yeah, Din, whatever.
Din Djarin.
Djarin, yeah. I don't like that part of it as well, and yeah, I don't know. I think this was probably Jon Favreau's worst writing for plot wise of the 3 seasons. Yeah, the plot was just all over the place for me. It just was really hard to focus on one single story.
I think the point that was made that this show, and this, I think narratively, why it was on rocky ground to start out with, because what was so great about the first 2 seasons, and like we said, we'll get into those as we get to them, but is that the story that they started in the first episode of season 1 about this lone bounty hunter and this kid that he was trying to protect, like, it comes to a satisfying conclusion at the end of season 2. Not that the show has to end, but that that arc of the story, that chapter has ended. And I think where the show needed to go, and I think originally this probably was their plan, is that they needed in season 3 to go to a format of, you still have Mando and you still have Grogu, but you have them on their own separate plots. Throughout the show, where Mando kind of goes back to doing his thing as a bounty hunter. It'd be kind of cool sending him on these different missions, and this whole time he's sort of missing Grogu, and he's, you know, longing for that. Maybe he's a little off his game because he's distracted. And then Grogu, on the other hand, he's training with Luke, and he's doing all these different things. And then maybe near the end of that season, because of certain circumstances in the plot, with maybe Gideon's back in the picture, whatever the case may be, they're either thrown back together or they have to come back together. And you could have incorporated Luke in there somehow to where he could have like been a part of that and had a really cool sort of climactic team up with him, and maybe even Ahsoka, and these different things you could have done with it, to the point where, yes, you bring them back together, but you do it in a way that logically makes sense. Whereas, like, all they did was, oh, there's this other show we did called Book of Boba Fett. If you go watch those 2 episodes, we sort of just threw them back together all of a sudden for just because. And it's very clear, like, I think it was Ms. Goozle that said it, is like studio interference. Mm-hmm. You can tell that Disney or Lucasfilm was like, hey, those 2 have to be together because that's how we sell stuff. And they kind of, you can tell it's been shoehorned. Yeah, it's been shoehorned back in. And so I think that's the start of the problems. And I could go into a lot of stuff with the show itself being narratively a mess all over the place. There's too many things going on in it, and they really don't know what to do with all of it. But I think it went from something very small and intimate and sort of very concentrated, and had a cohesive sort of direction to something that was just like like a bowl of spaghetti. It was just like everywhere in season 3. So
they have a bad habit of avoiding and incorporate all their shows together. They want everything to, I don't want to say blend, but they want all their new they almost want, Book of Boba Fett is a good example, and even Ahsoka, but they just want everything to be like Mandalorian episode 9. Really, it's like it all started with one show, and it got popular, successful, and they just kept going, and they keep bringing back characters, and I think there is something lost in that.
Kind of like how the Arrowverse kept bringing in DC characters, and
that's
then
a good point.
They just all got. You couldn't watch just one superhero show. You had to watch them all in order to know what was going on.
Disney's bad about doing that with all these new Star Wars stuff. You had, like you said, go back and watch Boba Fett, by the way, and you'll understand this. And to the average watcher, which I don't care about casual watchers,
The 2 Mando episodes in Boba Fett were the best 2 episodes in the Boba Fett show. So it's that's a whole nother issue. But anyway, we'll jump over to the next one. That was a really interesting discussion because I think we all brought up. I think we really touched on all the reasons why the show had problems, and also maybe some reasons why people enjoyed it. So, but yeah, let's go to 21, and that's going to be the Bad Batch season 3. Megan and Andrew, y'all have not seen this one, so we'll just kind of
we'll forget.
Yeah. We won't give a lot of that, but I guess I'll start since I ended the last one. But yeah, I enjoyed this show for the most part. Obviously, this was the conclusion to the Bad Batch animated series. It's basically a direct sequel to the Clone Wars with characters that showed up in the very last season in a 4-story arc. It was actually the very first 4 episodes of the renewed season 7 that came back and ended the Clone Wars show. This was the final season in the show of the Bad Batch, and definitely didn't enjoy this one as much as Rebels or as the Clone Wars, but it's got the best looking animation of any of those 3 shows because it's the newest, and that part is always visually pleasing to watch. And I think the biggest problem with this show has always been that the characters they chose are just not that well known and that well invested in. And so, like, a lot of people just didn't care to watch it because, like, who are these guys? Oh, they showed up in this other show that I didn't watch either. So it's like, if they would have gone with like Rex or Cody or somebody that like is well known, they could have done a similar plot line. But I think that kind of falls by the wayside a little bit here. But in season 3 specifically, I thought it was. I think the biggest issue with this show is its derivative in all 3 seasons. The plot tends to pretty much stay the same. This one clone, Omega, she's a variation, a female variation of Django. Everyone needs to get Omega, and that's like the entire show. And I think that's a kind of the biggest issue with the plot of this show, and it continues all the way through season 3. And I think the fact that it never really graduates from that holds it back, narratively speaking. A lot of fun moments, fun characters, fun character moments specifically for individual characters. But I think all in all, other than just visually looking good and having some of those fun moments, it's really narratively just not much to write home about.
Yeah, I think they probably could have shortened the season a little bit because there was a lot of like filler episodes. I feel like that didn't like advance the plot a whole lot. I think that was my biggest pet peeve. I do really like how they, I guess, dived into Crosshair a little bit more in the season. I really enjoy Crosshair as a character. I think he's one of my more favorites, so I enjoyed that part of it. But yeah, I mean, I think the season was just too long. Like they could have brought it down a little bit more and not less probably filler episodes, and maybe had some more episode or replace those filler episodes with episodes that actually like advance the plot, made it more interesting. It just kind of got boring halfway through a little bit and was just kind of didn't feel needed at that point.
I would say the whole show suffers from that, though. Like you were saying, like filler episodes. There is a lot of just pointless episodes in the show.
To be fair though, I think they probably like I don't know. I think it was a decent send off though for the series because I don't think they're making another. This is the final season, right? I believe.
Yeah, this was it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they ended it fine. I mean, I'm not gonna say like they ended it bad. I think it was a good send off for them, but I think they could have done a little bit better.
I think, maybe from the beginning they thought it might could reach the same heights as the Clone Wars, maybe, or at least similar, but it didn't get that good, obviously. Although the I think the final season was satisfying enough. It is enough closure. I think for these characters, the season started off really strong. I think we did some episodes on it. It's like 8. The first 8 maybe were pretty good, and then it kind of lost its urgency a little bit towards the middle, and then picked it up at the very end, like the last episode. So I'm with you guys.
Well, it's also a difference. Like the scale of this show is a lot smaller than Clone Wars is, and even Rebels. Right. Like it is a smaller, more character driven, like just that group of people doing their small, almost like the Mandalorian is in season 1, where it's just like a very contained thing. And I think when you go from the grandeur of the Clone Wars to this, it's like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. So, yeah, I think they build your expectations like, oh, this is just like the Clone Wars, and then you watch it, and you're like, this is nothing like the Clone Wars. So, yeah.
Fair.
But anyway, we'll jump over to 20, and that's going to be Tales of the Jedi, which y'all, I have on here that y'all have not seen this, but I know one of you were talking about this earlier that you have seen it, or maybe it was Tales of the Empire.
Empire.
It was Empire. Okay, so y'all have not seen this one either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, yeah. So this one is funnily enough that this one comes right after the last one, because we were just talking about how the Bad Batch doesn't really feel as much like Clone Wars narratively. This one definitely does in a lot of ways, because it feels like almost just like short stories that branch right off of the Clone Wars, which essentially it is. But Tales of the Jedi, we get, I believe it was 3 short 15-minute episodes following Ahsoka, 3 short episodes following Count Dooku, and we kind of get some more backstory there. This is one of those that, for me personally, I don't think we needed the Ahsoka episodes, because, like, I mean, what do we not know about her character at this point? She's probably the most fleshed out character in Star Wars, maybe of all the characters at this point, because she's had so much exposure. But I really enjoyed the Count Dooku episodes in this, because it filled in a lot of blanks that I had not heard of, or I didn't really have the information there, because he's not really been explored all that much. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. Visually looks great. It's the same animation from the Clone Wars. Performances are great. Really a lot of fun moments. So all in all, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I love Count Dooku. He's like one of my more favorite Siths, I would say, from the prequels. And I really enjoyed them going kind of like deep diving into his character a little bit more and his backstory. And also Qui-Gon Jinn was in it, which was cool. I enjoyed that as well. See more of him, because we didn't really obviously get much of him besides episode 1. But yeah, just, I don't know. I think the stories were good. And I enjoy little, like, I would say short stories from like different like movies, like the Disney short stories that you get all the time on Disney Plus. I enjoy watching those. They're always like interesting and fun to watch. And yeah, I enjoy this. I mean, it reminded me of Clone Wars, like you said, and I like that as well. I think the Ahsoka one wasn't terrible either. I mean, it was enjoyable to watch still, even though I guess it kind of like what you said, it probably wasn't needed, but I still like that they did it. So
I think the potential of the series is really held back by, I mean, a lackluster script, and it didn't have enough episodes. I mean, I understand what it is, but the episodes with Ahsoka just kind of felt unnecessary. I know Johnny mentioned it. They don't really serve any purpose. It's really just kind of a rushed retelling of the Ahsoka novel. I think that was released 8 years ago, maybe 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
The episodes with Dooku, I'm like you guys. I was interested to see, see more of him. They are more enjoyable than the Ahsoka episodes, but they also, I think they really fail Dooku as a character. To be honest, obviously very rushed. It's all very rushed, but it kind of paints a picture of him as like this impatient, jealous Jedi who's really becoming evil for no reason. In the prequels and in the book about him, they talk about, he was a political idealist. He was cunning and manipulative, and he managed to leave without them noticing his fall to the dark side. So I just feel like this show doesn't do his character. It just rushed, right? I mean, if there's more episodes or more of a story, that could have got more of that in there. That's why I've got it so low.
Well, and I think they try to play him off as like a sympathetic villain or like a tragic hero, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, he's definitely. It's definitely one of those where it's like, do they even paint the correct picture of what the character's supposed to be? And I think that's a debate that can be had. But because, like we said, there's very, very little of him outside of. I know there's like a script from a screenplay or something, like a book or something that they did, and I think that you might have mentioned to me before, Drew, and then there's obviously the prequels and then this one, but yeah, but I think you hit on a lot of good points there. All right, let's jump over to 19, and that's going to be Book of Boba Fett. We kind of briefly mentioned this with Mando season 3, but now we'll jump kind of right back into it. This was the sort of big reveal at the end of Mandalorian season 2 in the post credits that this was happening, and I think along with the Kenobi show, this was kind of the one that everybody had kind of been asking for a long time. It's kind of the show that we kind of thought that the Mandalorian would be this. Like, this was kind of when the Mandalorian came out, everyone was kind of hoping for a Boba Fett show that was him hunting for bounties and things like that, and so then we got the show, and to say it subverted expectations a little bit, it's probably an understatement in terms of what the show was going to be, sort of the tone of the show. But I'm going to let Megan and Andrew jump back in since they've been out the last couple, and just let them tell us their thoughts on this one.
Well, honestly, my favorite part of the Book of Boba Fett is that it was predicted in that episode of Parks and Recreation during a filibuster where one of the characters is literally just making up stuff as it goes. And I'll be honest, that's my favorite part of the Book of Boba Fett is that little bit. But I really, again, like I think I've said on every single one that I've said, I liked the nostalgia factor. I liked that they brought in Boba Fett because Andrew and I have talked about this in the past. We've always joked that Boba Fett's weirdly overrated sometimes because, people are obsessed with him. He's only in the original series for just a little bit.
Like 10 seconds.
And all we really know about him is that even Vader is kind of like, bro, you need to chill.
Yeah.
So it's nice that the character is finally fleshed out, even though it is more of him in his retirement age. But I just liked it. It was, small town gangster drama with a little bit of space battles thrown in. It was simpler than what I think people would have expected. And I kind of liked the teenage motorcycle gang in it. They were goofy. But like I said, it's mostly
Jonathan's
just
cringing. He's like, I can see him sweating.
the only reason why I'm on this show is to make Jonathan upset.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to make you guys even more upset with my ranking of Empire Strikes Back, but I kind of did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting ahead of ourselves. I agree. Nostalgia factor was great. This is kind of the dad show. This was for all the dads that are the same age as the guy who's playing Boba Fett, in my opinion, that are Star Wars fans with kids. One of my very first Legos was like the original Slave One or whatever they call it now, because apparently that's not PC.
Yeah. Don't
Whoops,
say that.
my bad.
They deleted
Boba
that
Fett
off the face
ship,
of the earth.
whatever.
Servant one.
Indentured servant one. It was the little green one with the little Han Solo that came out, the little drop down thing, and so sometimes critics are always saying that there's not enough fan service in any sort of media. This is about as fan service as it gets. It's the book of Boba Fett, and it's in the name. Narratively, it was a little bit more of a shoot off from Mandalorian. I was fine with that. I kind of wish they'd have done something a little more original with him. Maybe some flashbacks to him right after the Geonosis arena, leaving with his dad's head. I was kind of wanting a little bit more of that, but it's okay. Fan service, I keep coming back to it. We got seismic charges against TIE fighters. Who doesn't like that? That was awesome. It was so cool. I remember what's happening. I was like, he's gonna do the thing. And of course, you got your volume, and you're like, yeah, and you turn on your surround sound. You're like, let's pause it, make sure the sound's right, the bass and the treble's right. But it was good. There was some things about it that there's some critics online that were just kind of like, but I enjoyed it. But with Megan kind of stole my answer a bit. I think Boba Fett's overrated, always has been. I think Mandalorians have always been overrated. Especially before we got any new Star Wars stuff. People just loved Boba Fett and Mandalorians before we even had even before the Clone Wars even existed as a TV show. So I was always kind of like not pro Boba Fett, but because it was very much, he was overrated in my opinion. But as the years have gone on, I've liked it. I've liked him as a character much better. And it was really cool to see Django's actor come back. I think that was really, really, really cool. And it shows that despite some of the negative media attention, PR, fan criticism of Star Wars as a whole, that some of the actors aren't a part of that, and they're willing to come back and play their characters. And I think we as fans need to chill out sometimes about our criticism, because if they're willing to come back, they're having fun and they're wanting to keep the universe alive.
If the guy who played Jar Jar Binks is willing to come back, then
which I think was cool, because that poor guy went through so much, and he was a total awesome guy in his little scene. But anyway, I like the book of Boba Fett. It was fun. It was a fun.
The top 5 Star Wars character. So
what now?
I said Jar Jar Binks is the top 5 Star Wars character to me. So,
I agree. I don't dislike Jar Jar. I really don't.
No, I honestly don't either. I think he gets a little bit too much overhate. Honestly,
he does.
Well, so the best I ever heard that argument put. I'm not going to go off for 5 minutes on this, but Chris Gore, who does a great channel called Film Threat, he's also a actual film critic. He said the biggest issue with Jar Jar is not the character; it's screen time. He says he has too much screen time, and that's like if he had less, then no one would have any issues with the character. And that's not even the Ahmed Best's fault, or Jar Jar's fault. That's George Lucas's fault. So that's kind of where I think that's the best point I've ever heard anybody make on it.
I think for me on this show, I've got it where it's at because of the fan service. I liked a lot of it. I know there's a lot of bad with it, but the fan service is where I've got it where it's at. They kind of spent 4 episodes. I liked the Tusken episodes a lot, but then he just kind of used them as a disposable hero's call, I guess.
Yeah.
The Hutts, I've always thought the Hutts were interesting, so I like seeing a little bit more than that. But then they only got used in a single episode, and they were really kind of I would say a weak plot device at best to get the Rancor.
That seems awesome.
I did not like Chrysanthemum. I liked the concept. Like when he first showed up, I was like, man, that's awesome. But his plot armor getting shot 10 times and just shrugging it off is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then
literal plot armor.
and Boba. As a fan of the games, right? Even Star Wars Outlaws, I enjoyed the game. Boba driving off a galaxy spanning criminal organization with about 15 guys doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because the
Outlaws
Huts were
good,
named all over the
but
galaxy.
Did you like Outlaws? I haven't bought it yet. I really want
I
to.
did. I
Okay,
did.
good.
I didn't do a
Then
lot
get
of. I'm one of those. I do it with a lot of games. I just play the story, and the rest of it can.
I agree.
Sure.
Well, I think everyone's always asked the question, what if the guy who made Spy Kids decided to do Star Wars? And well, you got it with this show, and I would say it shows. But like, I grew up on Spy Kids. I love those movies as a kid. But they are not great movies when you get. They don't age well when you go back and watch them.
Especially that third one.
But this show is this show is. I think it's a lot of it's what happens when like you give Taika Waititi Thor: Love and Thunder all to himself. It's the same thing when you give um, Robert Rodriguez Star Wars all to himself, because the episode of Mandalorian season 2 that he directs that reintroduces Boba Fett is like one of the most epic episodes in the entire Mandalorian show because of that sequence with Boba Fett. And he's shooting the rockets out of his knees, and he's knocking these stormtroopers upside the head with the gaffy stick. And I'm like, that is what we needed for 8 episodes in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get the best part of Boba Fett takes place in the show that he's reintroduced in, and not in his own show, I think is the biggest issue, because the show actually starts out really interesting when he's in the Sarlacc pit. It shows how he gets out. Like, that sequence is really cool. And then everything after that is just like, and that's like my thing is, it's like it builds it up to something kind of cool, but like it feels very much like there's great little moments, but there is no substance to the rest of the show. And this falls under the category that Kenobi does, in the sense that it does not justify its existence. And so, like, to me, like, the things that I remember that I liked the best about it, I liked seeing Cad Bane in live action. I thought he looked really cool and like really menacing, and I thought the guy, obviously, that played him in the animated series, I believe, was the voice of him in this one as well. So, stuff like that. Some of the fight sequences were really fun. Don't get me started on the speeder chase. I'm not going to do that.
Was the weakest
that
part.
was
I'll give him that.
the least exciting and the slowest chase I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And so, but and then like I told people, I said my 2 favorite episodes in the show were probably the 2 that diverted and focused on the Mandalorian, because I think it reminded everybody that the Mandalorian is what the Boba Fett show was supposed to be, but they couldn't do that because they'd already done it. And so everyone's like, oh, well, they should have just put Boba Fett as the Mandalorian. And that would have been, and to be honest with you, Boba Fett, his dad adopted him. How much well would it have tied in if he had been the one to find the kid, and he's reminded of his father, and that carries him on this journey. And I'm like, guys, you had a home run. Like,
missed opportunities, what you're saying.
You get a little bit of that Logan in there, where it's like, yeah, he's not as young as he used to be. He's having to sort of struggle to win sort of these fights and do these things. And I think that all of this show is like a massive missed opportunity. And I think that's ultimately where I stand with it.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I think my problem was it was just very slow. It took a while to pick up, and it was a lot of him just like sitting on his throne the entire show, I felt like, and not really doing a whole lot.
True.
I think they could have, I don't know. I wish, kind of like what you said, like more of like an old man Logan type deal where he's just struggling to fight some of these guys, but he's still getting it done. Like, I think that would have been cool to see more of. And the plot was, I would say, not mediocre, but it wasn't great. I do like that they brought Cad Bane in. live action form. That was pretty cool. I don't really care for how they ended his character. That
I agree.
I thought that was dumb, but it was cool seeing him in the live action form. I thought that was pretty cool. Other than that, I mean, yeah, it was just kind of lackluster. It was a little boring. It was kind of hard to like keep my interest in trying to watch it. So,
Best thing about this show is the score. The score in this show is actually really good.
Yeah.
I think you can say that just about any Star Wars series.
And we all look great. None of them look bad. Visually, they're all amazing. Like, fantastic.
I agree.
All right. Well,
No,
well,
Ewok are perfect.
it's a different time, a different era. So,
Especially Ewok Adventure was my number one.
It was just the gummy bears with a new skin. All it was. Watch the intro.
Golly.
Watch the Ewoks intro like after this, and you're like, it's just
perfect.
It's the gummy bears.
It's perfect.
It's the old gummy bears
It's
cartoon
perfect.
all over again.
Perfect.